A huge part of teaching grammar in context means not teaching grammar as its own subject. If you teach language arts and you feel like you really do teach 8 different subjects, well, it's because you do, right? But we need to trick our students into thinking that it's really just one subject, because it is. They're all so closely related and they all depend on each other to work. With reading, writing, listening, communicating, language, it all goes hand in hand, and grammar is a huge part of that. So we want our students to see that grammar fits in with all of it and not teaching it as its own separate subject. Like, okay, now it's time to do grammar, kids, get out your grammar book. Because a grammar book, when you look through it, is really just a rule book. Grammar is a gigantic set of rules for how we communicate language. And nobody wants to read a rule book, and nobody wants to be lectured about rules, and nobody wants to practice a bunch of rules. Imagine giving a kid a video game and saying, well, before you can play this video game, you need to know all the rules first. No kid would go for that. Talk to the PE teacher down the hall. What is the hardest time for those kids to pay attention? It's in the 5 minutes where they're explaining the rules for that day's game, right? Because they just want to get in there and play. They see all this stuff and they just want to go for it. That's our students with writing. They really do just want to go for it. They want to have fun with writing. But a lot of times we slow them down because first you need to know the rules so that you don't make so many errors when you're writing. We can't just set you free to go play with this, writing prompt. You need to have some rules first. We need to teach you grammar. And that is not the way to make it work. It's not the way to make it stick. We want our students to see it embedded in everything that we do. So for instance, quotation marks. I'm not going to teach quotation marks as its own isolated punctuation mark in its own little chapter on punctuation and say, okay, well, quotation marks are used in titles of short stories and titles of poems and titles of songs and titles of articles. And we also use quotation marks when we're doing dialogue, like in a short story. No, I'm teaching quotation marks when I teach research. I'm teaching quotation marks as a tool students have to use whenever they are getting information that is not their own. I'm showing them that quotation marks are how we communicate to the reader that this is exact and these are not my words. And if I choose not to use quotation marks, then my work is worthless because I'm lying. And that these quotation marks, they're not just random punctuation I can throw in. They have to be in a specific place, and that there's a formula for where I put the commas and the capital letters so that it will flow for the reader and so that they get the exact information they need and I communicate it efficiently. So when you think about teaching grammar in context, think about how you can embed all these grammatical concepts and the things that we're already teaching related to, the 8 different subjects that we're teaching.